February 2nd, 1959. 9 experienced hikers set out to conquer the northern Ural mountains of Soviet Russia. It was a challenging route, but nothing they couldn't handle. They were young, strong, and well prepared. 3 weeks later, searchers found their tent sliced open from the inside. And then, one by one, they found the bodies. What happened on that frozen mountain has baffled investigators for over 6 decades. The evidence defies logic. The theories range from plausible to impossible. And the truth, if it exists, remains buried beneath the snow of Dyatlov Pass. The group consisted of 10 people, led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student at the Ural Polytechnic Institute. All were experienced hikers and cross-country skiers. Their goal was to reach Otorten, a mountain approximately 200 miles north of their starting point. The route was classified as Category 3, the most difficult in the Soviet grading system. Completing it would earn them a prestigious certification. The group was diverse in age and experience. Alongside Dyatlov were Yuri Doroshenko, Yuri Krivonishenko, Alexander Kolovatov, Rustem Slobodin, Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, Zinaida Kolmogorova, Lyudmila Dubinina, and Semyon Zolotaryov, an older, enigmatic man who had joined the expedition at the last minute. The 10th member, Yuri Yudin, fell ill early in the trek and turned back. He was the only one who survived. On January 27th, the group began their ascent. They documented their journey with photographs and diary entries. The images show smiling faces, snow-covered forests, and the camaraderie of youth. There is no indication of trouble, no hint of the horror to come. Their last known photograph was taken on February 1st as they set up camp on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, a mountain whose name in the language of the indigenous Mansi people translates to Dead Mountain. When the group failed to return as planned, search parties were dispatched. On February 26th, searchers found the tent, partially buried in snow on the mountain slope. What they saw made no sense. The tent had been cut open from the inside, not torn by wind or animals, but deliberately slashed with a knife by someone trying to escape. Supplies, clothing, and boots were still inside, abandoned. Footprints led away from the tent, down the slope toward the forest below. Some were barefoot, others wore only socks. The searchers followed the trail. A mile and a half from the tent, beneath a large cedar tree, they found the bodies of Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko. Both were shoeless, dressed only in underwear. A small fire had been built nearby, its embers long cold. Branches on the cedar tree had been broken at a height of 15 feet, as if someone had climbed it to look back toward the tent. 3 more bodies were found between the cedar and the tent, spaced along the route, as if they had been trying to return. Igor Dyatlov was found first, then Zinaida Kolmogorova, then Rustem Slobodin. All 3 were partially clothed. Their positions suggested they had died while struggling through the snow. But 4 members of the group were still missing. It took 2 months to find the remaining bodies. On May 4th, searchers discovered them in a ravine, buried beneath 13 feet of snow. Unlike the others, these 4, Lyudmila Dubinina, Semyon Zolotaryov, Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, and Alexander Kolovatov, were more fully dressed. Some wore clothing that had been taken from the bodies found earlier. But their injuries told a different story. Lyudmila Dubinina's tongue, eyes, and part of her lips were missing. Nikolai Thibault-Brignol had a fractured skull. Semyon Zolotaryov and Lyudmila both had severe chest fractures, ribs broken with such force that a Soviet investigator compared it to the impact of a car crash. Yet there were no external wounds, no bruises, no signs of a struggle. The coroner noted that the level of force required to cause such injuries would have been immense, far beyond what a human could inflict with his hands. The clothing some of them wore had been cut away from the bodies of their deceased companions, suggesting they had attempted to survive, even after whatever happened in the ravine. One detail haunted investigators. Trace amounts of radioactive contamination were found on some of the clothing. Not enough to be lethal, but enough to be unusual. The Soviet investigation concluded in May 1959 with a bewildering statement. The hikers had died due to a compelling natural force which they were unable to overcome. The case was closed. The files were sealed. And for decades, the incident was largely forgotten, a strange footnote in Soviet history. But the families of the victims never forgot. Yuri Yudin, the lone survivor who had turned back early, spent the rest of his life seeking answers. He pored over photographs, retraced the route, and spoke with investigators. He died in 2013, no closer to the truth than he had been 50 years earlier. In the years since, the case has been reopened multiple times. Each new investigation has produced new theories, but no definitive answers. What could cause 9 experienced hikers to flee their tent in the dead of night in sub-zero temperatures without proper clothing or equipment? The theories range from the rational to the fantastical. The most recent official conclusion, reached in 2020 by Russian authorities, attributes the incident to an avalanche. The theory suggests that a delayed slab avalanche struck the tent in the middle of the night, causing panic and forcing the group to cut their way out and flee downhill. The injuries sustained by those found in the ravine, the theory posits, were caused by the weight of the snow. But there are problems with this explanation. Experienced investigators at the time found no evidence of an avalanche. The tent was still standing and only partially buried. The slope was not steep enough to produce the kind of avalanche that would cause such catastrophic injuries. And if an avalanche had occurred, why would the group not return to the tent once the danger passed? Another theory suggests that Kármán vortex infrasound, a phenomenon caused by wind interacting with the mountain's topography, induced panic. Infrasound at certain frequencies can cause feelings of dread, nausea, and hallucinations. Perhaps the hikers, gripped by irrational fear, fled the tent and succumbed to the cold. This theory explains the seemingly irrational behavior, but it does not explain the severe physical trauma suffered by those in the ravine. Some researchers believe the Soviet military was conducting secret tests in the area, perhaps testing parachute mines, missiles, or chemical weapons. 2 members of the group, Yuri Krivonishenko and Alexander Kolevatov, had worked at a nuclear facility and had been exposed to radiation months before the expedition. Could the radioactive contamination on the clothing be related to a weapons test? Witnesses in the area reported seeing bright orange spheres in the sky around the time of the incident. Were these military flares, rockets, or something else? But if a military accident killed the hikers, why would Soviet authorities not simply cover it up entirely, rather than allow a partial investigation? A simpler explanation involves a well-documented phenomenon, paradoxical undressing. In the final stages of hypothermia, victims often feel an intense sensation of heat and begin removing their clothing. This could explain why some of the hikers were found partially dressed. But this theory does not account for the trauma injuries, the slashed tent, or the behavior of the group in the moments before their deaths. The expedition took place on land considered sacred by the Mansi people. Some have speculated that the group was killed by indigenous tribesmen angered by the intrusion. However, there is no evidence of an attack. The Mansi were peaceful and had no history of violence against outsiders. Moreover, investigators found no signs of a struggle or the presence of others at the scene. Could a bear or other large predator have attacked the tent, causing the group to flee? This theory falters under scrutiny. There were no animal tracks near the tent. The injuries sustained by the victims are inconsistent with a predatory attack, and bears would have been hibernating in February. Perhaps inevitably, some have suggested that the group encountered a yeti or other unknown creature. The Mansi people have long spoken of the mink, a wild man said to inhabit the mountains. Could the hikers have stumbled upon something unexplained? There is no evidence to support this theory, but in the absence of a satisfying explanation, the imagination fills the void. Among the most haunting remnants of the expedition, are the photographs recovered from the hikers' cameras. Most show mundane scenes, setting up camp, cooking meals, trudging through snow. But a few images are unsettling. One photograph, taken from inside the tent on the night of February 1st, is almost entirely dark. A faint shape, possibly a figure, can be seen in the frame, but it is unclear what it depicts. Some believe it shows one of the hikers looking out into the darkness. Others think it is simply a blurred image caused by a long exposure. Another photograph, found on Krivonishenko's camera, shows a bright light in the night sky. Was it a flare? A rocket? A reflection? The image is too ambiguous to offer answers. These photographs, like so much of the Dyatlov Pass incident, provoke more questions than they answer. For over 60 years, the Dyatlov Pass incident has captivated investigators, filmmakers, and conspiracy theorists. Books have been written, documentaries have been filmed. Dozens of expeditions have retraced the hikers' final steps. Yet for all the scrutiny, the mystery remains. The evidence is contradictory, the theories are incomplete, and the truth, if it exists, seems always just beyond reach. 9 young people set out to climb a mountain. They never came home. What happened on that frozen slope, in the darkness of a Soviet winter, may never be fully understood. Perhaps it was an accident, a confluence of natural forces that culminated in tragedy. Perhaps it was something more sinister, hidden by a government that valued secrecy above truth. Or perhaps it was something stranger still, something that defies explanation. The mountain keeps its secrets. The dead cannot speak. And the Dyatlov Pass remains, as it has always been, a place of death and questions. The only certainty is this: on that night, something went terribly wrong. And whatever it was, it left 9 people dead and a mystery that refuses to die.
The past holds infinite secrets. Please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and activate notifications to join us on every new journey between myth and history.